Hello and welcome to this week's 10th grade English video lesson, where we'll be taking a look at our audience and how to write a hook. Imagine you're giving a presentation on environmental conservation to energy companies. The presentation went perfectly, and in the end, you got a standing ovation, but only from the renewable energy companies. The petroleum and mining companies were not so impressed. Why do you think you got this reaction? Well, one could imagine that renewable energy companies are actually invested in conserving the environment, whereas the opposite might be assumed about petroleum companies. In other words, the reaction depended on the audience. Two groups with different backgrounds, interests, or inclinations may well receive the same message in very different ways. Who is your audience? To whom writing or speaking? Beyond naming your audience, consider their perspective. What might interest that audience? How can you get their attention? Last week, we learned some techniques for defending a stance in a persuasive essay. Perhaps the most important aspect to achieving this is identifying and defining your audience. Knowing your audience will actually help you to strengthen a defense of your arguments. It also helps in understanding the best way to open your essay. Today, we will be learning how to write to a targeted group of people and how to get them so interested in what you want to say that they simply cannot put your paper down. When trying to capture an audience, you should start with a strong opening sentence that is relevant and entertaining. This, as you know, is called a hook. Let's take a quick look at what a hook might look like. A hook can take the form of a question, an anecdote, a declarative statement, or even a quote. It could be witty and funny, or factual and bold. But in all cases, it should be relevant to what you are about to write. You try. Last week's topics are listed below. For each, write a sentence to generate interest in the topic. But first, ask who your audience is. Would a hook look different for an audience of fellow students than it would for your teachers? Please pause the video and do this now. Today we're looking at the first line of your essay, the essay's very beginning. Before the line can be written, we need to step back and ask the two questions strong writers ask before writing. Who is the audience for my essay? What is my purpose in writing this essay? Strong writers determine the audience and purpose of their writing before they begin writing, so that they can communicate effectively. One can imagine that a letter to an important business person from a pen sales company trying to convince that business person to buy pens might read differently than a short piece about the history of pens written for a high school teacher. It is important to determine the audience and purpose before you begin writing. Consideration for your audience will guide you in the many choices you'll make in your essay, including how you open it. You'll have your audience in mind when you set your hook. Again, a hook is an opening line to a work that engages readers. It also introduces the topic. Here are a few of the possible elements a hook may include: a question, a quote, a statistic, a description. Take a second to write these down. You'll need them for reference on our next exercise. You try. For each object listed below, write 4 unique hooks, one for each of the elements listed on the previous slide. Please pause the video and do that now. I'm sure that you generated lots of great hooks. For the pen, you might have written, "What is one of the most common writing tools in the world today?" Or, Voltaire, a famous philosopher, once said that "to hold a pen is to be at war." Or, Maybe you said the Bic company sells 14 million Bic crystal ballpoint pens each year. Or possibly something like a common writing tool used to apply ink to a surface. The pen is one of the most frequently used writing tools in the world. Reflect. Look back at the hooks you've written. Rate each on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being not very engaging and 5 being very engaging. Remember that the purpose of the hooks is to introduce the topic, but also to create interest, to engage our audience. Please pause the video and rate your hooks now. You could imagine that we might write different hooks for different purposes and audiences. Look again at the examples of hooks for the pen. What might be the purpose and who might be the audience of each of the hooks provided? The purpose of the first example might be to introduce different kinds of common writing tools. The audience could be anyone. The purpose of the second example might be to explain how important written words and pens can be. This might be more effective in convincing someone who knows who Voltaire is about the importance of pens. With only the hook, it was possible to imagine what the purpose and audience might be. This illustrates the importance of determining the purpose and audience before you begin writing. Effective hooks consider the purpose and audience and are engaging, and they introduce the topic.